Here I tried to crouch cancel back 2, and then I tried to crouch cancel back 1. It didn't work. Of course, you could just press back, but of course that's playing into the Dragunov because he's going to continue chipping you with down 2. So of course, again, if you're frame perfect, right? I'll try getting it. Like so, you'll be able to punish Dragunov for it because that was the option Hwoarang has in Season 4. Welcome to Open Hwoarang Lessons 18. Today we'll be covering Hwoarang matchup changes. As you all know, there was a Season 4 balance patch that dropped and that made certain characters, most especially this girl over here, very, very strong. And other characters got some changes that made them better or even a little bit, bad. Not exactly worse, but just slightly bad. So even if Hwoarang didn't get any direct changes to him, whether it be a frame change, damage change, whether it be a buff or a nerf, didn't happen. He didn't even show up in the list, not a hitbox fix, nothing. But he still gets affected because if another character gets buffed or nerfed, that affects the matchup against Hwoarang. So the first change is Lidia. Lidia, as you know, she got nerfed quite a bit in the Season 4 patch. More or less what happened was they reduced the damage on some of her moves and increased frame reduction. So that's what I mean by frame nerfs here in this point. So certain moves have increased recovery, so you can punish it a lot easier, just like Lidia 3-2. That was very, very notorious for having like similar recovery like backlash like recovery. And by damage, it's like a bunch of her stuff. Heaven and Earth 1. Oh, Heaven and Earth. Heaven and Earth 1. DF1 plus 2. Down back 2. Etc. And forward 3. Not knocking down anymore on hit is a big deal because this is probably her fastest low crushing tool. And this knocked down and, gave wall splats as well. The fact that it no longer does that is a big deal. Even if Lidia... so the fact that Lidia also got changes to her mid options in Cat 1, which is now -10 on block, and then Cat 2, this is also -10 on block, means she's going to take a slight risk in regards to mid checking in her stances, even if she gets like major plus frames from both of these at plus 12, plus 15 respectively. And one of the bigger changes for Lidia is the fact that forward 1 plus 2, her whole string, Political Storm, her 14 frame Punisher, is now -15. So if a Lidia actually pulls out the whole thing, now Hwoarang gets DF2 in most ranges. And typically, if they do the whole string, they're always going to be in front of your face regardless. So that's really, really good for Hwoarang instead of him just getting a 4-3 or a 4-3 plus 4. So the matchup is more or less going to be played the same. The only thing I really want to stress about the Lidia Hwoarang matchup is that be careful with your lows, please. Because if you're not careful with your lows as Hwoarang, you are in a world of pain and you're going to get eaten up and you're going to be afraid of using your own lows, thus not starting up any offense or even checking your opponent in neutral with lows. And the Lidia will just control the space, control the pace with her good moves and good spacing and high recovery on whiff, and you're more or less dead. That's basically what I wanted to say. That's the only thing you need to know about the Lidia matchup so far. For Hwoarang at least. And her hell sweep's still big. The fact that her forward 3 no longer knocks down means you have more chances to live, even if she gets the right read on low crushing one of your lows. And on 3-2, you can more or less react with up back 3-3 now. Before it was like a small window, but now you'll more or less get it consistently. Before, what you had to settle for was while standing 3 into FF3 or back 3, but now you're always going to typically get up back 3-3 to register as a punish, which is great. So the matchup didn't really change because her combo damage is now slightly decreased, so she's not going to do a ton of damage anymore. She's still going to do a lot of damage, but not a ton of damage. She can't risk as much. She can't press any of those spammable strings like 3-2 because the frames were reduced, so you can easily get an up back 3-3 punish without a doubt. And Political Storm, they do forward 1 plus 2, the 14 frame Punisher as a poke, and decide to do the whole thing. It's no longer -14 in the matchup, it's -15 and always lands in your face. So Hwoarang's always going to get a clean DF2. And she can't take use of her advantage now for Cat 1 and 2 and transitioning to Heaven and Earth because the Rage Drive is no longer guaranteed into transition to get the Heaven and Earth 1 plus 2 or 1 or 2 to mix it up, just in case they start ducking the 1 plus 2 in Lidia's case. And the fact that it can be punched by it now as well for Hwoarang, so just in case you don't react, you could still react to both Heaven and Earth 1 and Heaven and Earth 1+2. Because the 2s are low, you can't punch parry that. You can only punch parry highs mid punches. And if she does an option of FF2 or DF2, and does the mid option, those are both -10, so she takes a slight risk when she does that, since that's her best checking option in both those stances. So again, that covers the Lidia matchup changes. And we'll move on to the next character, who is Feng. Feng Wei. So the main thing Feng Wei got in the balance patch for Season 4 is combo damage. His combo damage got increased by a good amount. So like one of the big ones here, DF4-3, his new screw moves now changed from 18 to 20 damage. The shoulders now 33 damage. The rage dive shoulders 38 damage. The hop kicks now 15 damage. His 13 frame Punisher while standing 1-2 is now 16 damage total. While standing 3 is now 20 damage instead of 16. It's a big deal. For a baseline comparison, I'm gonna use the Season 2 DF2 combo for Hwoarang. We're gonna compare 15 frame combos here. So this is 15. We'll do F4 back 3 here. And I'll use the typical ender, which is that's 70 damage for Hwoarang. So 63. So as you can see, the damage is more or less similar, but not exactly the same. But again, that's a basic B&B combo. I don't know the full Feng combos, but I'm pretty sure a Feng main would have a stronger combo, whether that be involving FF4, 3 or whatever, and maybe increasing the wall carry. Of course, if he gets wall, the damage is massive with the wall ender 1, DF1, back 1+2. So the main change in this matchup is more or less damage. And 13 frame while standing punish. So at +1, 29 damage. You still have to wait because again, back 1's an issue there, and of course back 4 is gonna catch you. So you have to be a little bit more careful with your lows, since a good number of Hwoarang's lows here are 13, like SS3 and down back 3. Those are the main lows you'll be using more often than not. And down back 4 if you're not entering Flamingo, but that's -12. So more or less you're gonna be like -1 doing RFS F4. So those two lows, down back 3 and SS4, mainly will be getting hit by while standing 1-2, and that's 29 damage at +1. So it's an iffy situation, but Feng has slight control over that. And so what you want to worry about is getting launched. So if you get launched, do know that you're going to eat more damage, and maybe the 5 HP buff that was given in Season 4 may not save you. Most especially if Feng has rage, because his rage drive damage is now has been differentiated from his regular shoulder in terms of damage. Not just the properties aren't different, but now it gives way more damage. Most especially if one of those combos where you don't tech right, or like you stay on the floor. If you don't stay on the floor and you tech, you could get hit by the rage drive shoulder, because that's one of the tech catches that give a lot of damage. Feng changes in the Season 4 matchup. Damage, it's all about damage, so watch out for that. The next character on the list is Leo. So the main changes in this matchup is the counter hit game. So Leo's F4 now, if you get counter hit by this move, you're going to get launched. And a bunch of her follow-ups like DF1-2, while standing 3-1-2, basically stuff that was ending typically in a 2. All their counter hit behaviors will change. Now they give a free knockdown follow-up in FF1+2, I believe is the input, or you could change it to FF2 or FF3. And FF2 being a safe mid approach tool, even if it is -9. And at -9, she still has Leo has a parry. So if you retaliate with, let's say, a mid punch, let's say a DF1, she could parry that, and you could be, let's say, at the wall or not. You're still gonna be in slight trouble because and demonstrate again, her punishers got buffed. This 13 frame punisher got really buffed. So again, if you do something that's pretty unsafe, and typically in Hwoarang's case, he has -13s. Or a small whiff punishment, let's say step towards the right and up forward 1-2, that's gonna hurt a lot. The change on DF1-2, yeah, that's gonna connect for sure. That's the actual damage. So that's a total again of, again, I can't tech, I was already teching. So that's a total of 58 damage, and that's a lot. So if you press in between DF1-2 or maybe while standing 3-1-2, etc., you're gonna be in a world of hurt. And of course, the other thing they buff for her is F4. So again, if F4 counter hits, this is an instant launch. Well, of course, that combo wasn't exactly optimal, but The fact that you will get caught by this 17 frame mid check, which is again +8. +8 on block. +9. All the more you can't challenge. So there are going to be situations against Leo where she can squeeze F4. So you have to be wary of those situations where Leo can squeeze that F4 in between to get like that free counter hit. And that's going to be a launch into you. Of course, her combo damage was slightly increased. So now she's like at the... somewhere in the middle of the 60s damage. So you'll have maybe slightly less chances to live. But more or less, the matchup is more or less the same. Just like the Lidia matchup, it's still going to be hovering around the even to slightly bad range for Hwoarang. And of course, if FF2, even if it is -9, you can still challenge her or even check Leo with a DF1 or go straight into down 3-4 mix. And of course, both options have their risk-reward. DF1 being the slightly safer option to go for because that won't get low crushed or low parried. Leo would have to go for the parry in order to beat DF1. There's no other button she could use in that particular situation to win. Yes, and QCF1 is also -1. So that annoying low poke, this used to be -2, now it's -1. So now Leo can casually just do a down jab just in case you challenge or even possibly trade with while standing 4. Of course, you could still... So let's say they do QCF1 into while standing 4, 1+2. You could still do the option to avoid with F3. And you'll avoid a good number of Leo options from while standing if you get it right. Like so. And of course her, her while standing 1+2 is also, again, just like the lows, Hwoarang lows, down back 3 and SS4. If you use them when your back is behind the wall, watch out, you're going to get wall bounce just like Dragunov's while standing 1-3. So yeah, so that was the Leo matchup changes for Hwoarang, more or less. So I'll move on to the next character, who is the classic Dragunov. We are no stranger to down 2 force crouching on hit. This is the main change they gave Dragunov in the balance patch for Season 4. And what this means is the situation where you could do F3 into LFS DF3-4 or LFS up forward 4 against all the while standing options after down 2 because you remain standing before. But now since you're force crouch, you could still do it, but it's extremely difficult to do. You have to be frame perfect on your crouch cancel to forward 3 in order to avoid most of the options if you want to use that route. Because again, it's still 0 on hit. But of course, the main thing that this is going to give, right? The interaction of down 2 is going to come back. The Season 1 interactions. So that is basically down 2 into down jab or down 2 into while standing 4 typically. Those are the main interactions you're going to be getting in this current season. Of course, you can't press any button here. You're going to be losing more or less if you try to press any of the evasive buttons. Here, I tried to crouch cancel back 2, and then I tried to crouch cancel back 1. It didn't work. Of course, you could just press back, but of course, that's playing into the Dragunov because he's going to continue chipping you with down 2. So, of course, again, if you're frame perfect, right? I'll try getting it. Like so, you'll be able to punish Dragunov for it because that was the option Hwoarang has in Season 4. Before, they brought it back to force crouch, but now since it force crouches, there's really typically nothing much you can do in this situation. So you could challenge trade with a down jab if you'd like, but of course, if the Dragunov is ahead of you, they could low parry, and you'll be in trouble. But of course, it is an option. That's the mind games that's going to be mixed into that situation, more or less. So it more or less brings Season 1 interactions back. So this is the way Dragunov worked in Season 1. And that's how Hwoarang reacted most of the time. Albeit not doing the forward 3 situation because that was pretty tough. Because you were coming from crouching. So the only thing Hwoarang didn't have in Season 1 was down 3-4. Because down 3-4 in Season 1 had major pushback on hit. Now it's very, very close. So that could change the way the matchup slightly plays. With Dragunov getting his down 2 change back. But more or less, it's probably going to sit in the same way it always has, which is slightly bad. Because his Dragunov's while standing punishment is really, really strong against all of Hwoarang's lows. especially with wall standing 1-3 being a 12 frame wall bounce. So if you do it again with your back behind the wall and you do it low, you're in big trouble. But more or less in open and in neutral, the main thing that changed is how down 2 is going to be used and how oppressive it might become for Dragunov, most especially since they gave him a mid-homing move. So in tandem with that, the way you interact against Dragunov is more or less the same. It's just the more defensive aspect of playing against Dragunov. So that's more or less the Dragunov changes in Season 4 against Hwoarang. Alright, it's this big boy, Jack 7. So the main changes Jack got in Season 4 is his FF1's back. It's Season 1 level. It's back in action. Its tracking is back. If you try to step against this move, you're going to get hit. If you don't walk, you have to walk, not step. And his down back 1 damage was also increased. So it does the chipping factor. If Dragunov got his ability to chip you back, Jack already has it. They gave it more damage, so it's gonna hurt even more. Yeah, the FF1 down back 1 tandem, the use of the left robot arm is going to hurt a ton. And then we'll just get down back 1 here. So as you can see, that did 15 damage. Again, that's 15 damage at +2. And the situations are more or less the same since Season 1, 2, 3, and 4. The way you handle this situation is still more or less the same. You're either gonna guess or maybe press back 1. And back 1 could be a viable option if your back is behind the wall, or even in open. And of course, when your back's behind the wall, make sure Hwoarang's right isn't cornered by a wall. Because if it is, back 1's gonna have 0 effect and there's gonna be 0 evasion on it. But it could still be used more or less in open. You could back 1, but of course, again, you could get baited maybe into a backdash DF2. So that's something you have to, it's a risk. It's a risk and it's something you have to look out for. But it's something you can use to challenge against Jack. So just to show you this FF1 situation here, I'm gonna just step. And I still get caught. And the difference, and I'll show you the difference if I walk after the first FF1. It's you can still more or less walk it, but if you just press up, there'll be times where you step it based on the range. But again, he caught me there with a block, so the fact that it's tracking his back is like a big deal. So the way you again interact, just like Dragunov, the only thing that's new here is again Hwoarang's down 3-4 having the no pushback on hit, so it could be a major factor, maybe question mark, because Jack was lacking his FF1 for those Season 2, 3, 4. And he got extra tools instead. But now he got his old tool back, and his best low also got buffed with giving it a lot more chip damage. That's more or less the changes to the Hwoarang Jack matchup in Season 4. We'll move on to the next character, Eddy. Eddy already received all-around buffs. So he also had some bug fixes as well. But the main stuff I want to highlight is forward 2-3. Because forward 2-3 is now +10. You cannot interrupt forward 2-3 on hit anymore. Because his fastest option in handstand will always win. You cannot beat him in regards to that. It's too much of a risk, most especially for Hwoarang, who doesn't have a standing rage art. His standing rage art exists, but you have to enter a stance for it, and it might be a little bit too late in that regard for Hwoarang challenging handstand after forward 2-3 as an option. Not exactly the most ideal. And of course, a bunch of his moves had damage increase, like 3-4, that's now +2 damage. Down back 2-3, it keeps the opponent closer now, which is, allows him to chip and run away, so he could absorb you, like a vortex, keep you close, and then just like the Flash, move away, backdash to the nth century, most especially if you're playing in an infinite stage. And if you're playing in a relatively big stage, like let's say Last Day on Earth, or Hammerhead, Violet Systems, it's going to be very difficult to catch him, most especially if he has the lead. Most especially since a forward 4 is now homing. His forward 4 is now homing, so even if you were stepping towards his weak side, and you had some chances of stepping a forward 4, even if it had decent tracking, all the more, you are not going to be stepping this move. Although you still should be stepping towards his weak side, but he's more or less going to be able to catch you, even if it is a safe move, and you could press buttons after it, but it has long reach as well. He's got them dancer legs, and FF4's hitbox was expanded lower, so he's going to do more damage on certain follow-ups, and that's an issue in itself versus Eddy. So I don't know what follow-up it is, but this hits grounded now, essentially. So that does a lot of damage. And gives good Oki to him as well, because he's now going to end up either in relax, or they could choose to remain in handstand, whatever their choice is. Of course, his combos were fixed as well. Like, this is the main stuff. This forward 4 being homing. So even if you were stepping towards the weaker side, he could catch you easily now with a forward 4. He doesn't have to worry about it losing at times. Yeah, so of course the weak side is towards the right, so this is how you beat more or less jabbed into DF2. I was getting hit earlier. There, just like that. Again, just for good measure. That one I blocked it. That one I stepped it. So you're gonna be stepping towards the right in that situation. But now you have to SS block. You can't just step. Because there will be instances where you may beat a forward 4, but again, as I mentioned earlier, now you're never gonna beat it because it's homing. And the fact that now F23 is plus 10, you're never gonna beat the fastest option in handstand. Ever. I was already down jabbing there. And that was back 1. Back 1 has the best evasion. And even if I rage art, right, I believe it does not have the light of day to do it. Yeah, I can't even rage art. I'm already pressing the rage art button. Even if I press that manually instead of the rage art button, there's still not enough time. So those are the few stuff that's a big deal in regards to fighting Eddy. The fact that he has more leeway and more control to do what he needs to do and wants to do is perfect for his game plan. And since his matchup was already bad, it's still gonna be in the bad. Most especially since he earned some situations now, and they're more slightly in his favor. So that more or less covers the Eddy matchup, the Season 4 changes. So it's bad, and it's probably gonna remain bad because he has more stuff that are slightly more in his favor. So we'll move on to the next character. We're moving to the last two. The last two big characters who receive major changes. The characters I've left for last have received the best changes in the Season 4 balance patch. And have changed the way the matchup will most definitely interact the most. So the character we're talking about here is Lili. So Lili got buffs all around. And the fact that she has a new counter hit launcher, which is really long in F4, similar to Brian's 3+4 and maybe Hwoarang 3+4 as well. And the fact that it's safe compared to those two options which are unsafe is a big deal, even if it's linear. The fact that she already can step most of Hwoarang's stuff a lot with ease, regardless of the side she's picking, even if it doesn't really matter what side you're stepping, much more does it matter. It doesn't matter for Lili here. So those weren't the only changes she received. Even if I am highlighting F4 and how it can be mixed in between her ability to step, the fact that FF3 also launches now and gives really good combo. Down 1-2. Down 1-2 is her down 3-4 essentially. And the fact that its mid option cannot be challenged is on hit. On hit? Yeah, I believe on hit. You cannot challenge it. You cannot escape with a back 1. You cannot escape with a back 2. You cannot escape with an up back 4. We'll show that later as we demonstrate it. And so it's a really big deal. Her back turn, she has now a low that allows her to access back turn at +3. Or not even choose to enter back turn at +3 because they extended the hitbox of DF1 lowered. And since Hwoarang is not a Link Xiaoyu, a Zafina, an Eddy with a low profiling stance, if ever, he's not going to be avoiding DF1 anytime soon. So he's going to be caught by DF1 in situations like that, where she's +3, she could do down 1-2 and then DF1 to mid check cleanly. And she doesn't have to worry about it being backdashed. The only time she has to worry about it being backdashed is when it's range dependent. She's doing it quite far, like slightly tip range. That's when, like, let's say jab and you're quite far from each other, and then she does DF1, DF1 could lose to a backdash in that situation. But more or less, most of the time, you're going to be in close range versus this character. And the fact that they also changed FC DF1's counter hit properties to give a better follow-up now is quite strong for her. Very strong. And down 3 reaches some really far. Really far away. And up back 1 is just knockdown 2. Really strong knockdown 2. We're gonna go into the game just to present these stuff right here. And to talk about what I was mentioning, FF3 is now a launcher, and that's a big deal. So she can intermix her movement. So instead of doing the cartwheel now, she can just do FF3 and even can't just hold back. Or even go forward, then cancel it and back. So do glide and whatnot. As a Hwoarang player, the fact that she's already slippery enough to catch, just like Zafina, Kunimitsu, etc., characters of that nature, including Ling, you have to be even more careful because she can lay in the pain. Most especially if she catches you steps and then F4 and then a counter hits. She can literally control the space by moving around with just F4. And then if she gets her chance to do her, her low string. So I'll show it to you. I'll do the whole thing. You cannot. On hit, I can't press back 1. You can't press back 2. And you can't even press your power crush. So all the more, you're forced to block this. So this puts you in a situation where, does she go for the mid option? Since it is a mid option. Or does she enter back turn? Wherein she has an 8 frame high, really, really solid mid option, good low option. Or does she just do the whole thing into a DF1? And if she does the whole thing, the whole thing into a DF1, even if I backdash here, it still catches. So she's more or less in the safe. If you don't, let's say, step. But even if you step, I step towards the left there. The right, you'll be more or less safe towards the right. But they're gonna use another option to catch you for sure. Whether that be a long hitting down 3. Yeah, that's pretty far. Or step with you. And then you still have to watch out for the surprise Matterhorns, the hop kicks, and even Edelweisses that may appear. The way she is built now is quite different. And she can really pack a punch against Hwoarang. The main issue before against playing against the Lili matchup here was finding a way to catch her and not put yourself in trouble where she could squeeze in moves to crush or let her control the pace with small pokes here and there. Now she can control the pace with big reward, have a low string that has difficulty which you cannot challenge on hit. Have a launcher from just approaching with FF3. Of course, there were some bug fixes as well. Oh, and up back 1 just being 16 frame knockdown into a guaranteed down 3. And that's really good Oki for Lili. And it's a mid. So it's another solid mid option they have to check aside from DF3 and DF4, down 4, etc. Like the way they want to mix it together, and it makes it quite oppressive. And of course, I didn't show it earlier. That most likely will do a ton of damage. And that's like something really basic. I'm pretty sure the optimal one would probably be like a while standing 3. Which will give the flip, again, they'll give the flip Oki, and flip Okis are really strong in this game, and she's gonna get that. So, without a doubt, this matchup is going to move. If it was already sitting somewhere in even, or even slightly bad, it could move to slightly bad, but more or less in the even zone, based on the risk-reward, it could move all the way to bad. Because of the way her slippery nature, and the fact that she can get way more reward now, and hit Hwoarang quite far in a tandem of F4 and down 3, and then mixes up with everything else, including FF3, has a better hitbox in DF1, good low string poke in down 1-2, better FC game with better reward. So yeah, you have to watch out for Lili and be more and more careful in the way you want to deal with fighting her. So that's more or less the Lili matchup for Season 4 now, for the foreseeable future, if there are no more balance patches. Heihachi Mishima. My goodness, this man has received significant changes. Of course, some of them are bug fixes, which are great. But some of those bug fixes increased his combo potential. Of course, I can't do the combo. So the combo involves doing OTGF, Godfist F2-3, forward 3, into instant while standing 4, then back forward 2-3, I believe, is the combo. And that gets fit in almost all of his combos. So it does a lot of damage and does far more carry. And if you meet a Heihachi main who has that combo down consistently, you're in big trouble if you get launched. Most especially since the electric still tracks quite well and recovers pretty fast as well. The fact that he also has now a 13 frame while standing punish, just like other characters like Feng got his while standing 2-1 buff. Heihachi now you have to watch out for, because he's going to get a while standing 1 into either forward 3, back 4, down 1. QCF2, but most especially, it's going to be while standing 1 into OTGF all the time. And that's going to hurt a lot. And again, that's going to give the flip Oki just like Lili. That's pretty strong in this game. And knowing it's a Mishima, he's going to wave Oki in your face. And that could be a down back 2 or a down 4 or even FF2, since that's still range dependent for Hwoarang back 3. And of course, the far-reaching jab in DF1, which is really, really far now. Really, really far. So, 13. This is 13. That's 45 damage. That's for comparison, right? That's 13 frame punish, 45 damage. For Hwoarang, the most he'll get is 39 damage. That is a big difference already. So, and Hwoarang has a kit of 13 frame lows. And the most common one you'll be using in this matchup is down back 3 because you want to be avoiding the God Fist. You want to high crush it. But now you're going to be eating a while standing 1 most of the time. So now you have to be even slightly more careful with the way you're setting down back 3. And even if, while you're being careful with setting down back 3, mind you, you have to watch out for the fact that he can now interrupt you with his DF1. Because he reaches really, really far. As you can see, that's really, really far. So that's already down back 3 range in neutral. And he could just catch you with a jab or a DF1 and move around safely. So now he can control a lot better by just moving DF1 and then slowly chipping you with down 4s in a tandem of DF1. And then add the big low and then maybe move in. Then God Fist. So even if you step towards the left, right? You're still gonna get caught. So he has a safe mid option again. And a reliable down 1 to catch. So you're still SS blocking, but it's pain. That's what it is. It's pain. So the fact that he can control, just like, again, that's what made the Kazumi matchup quite difficult. The fact that Kazumi could literally just keep Hwoarang in check, deny him his flamingo, or even restrict him to LFF as much as he can. Like, that's what Kazumi did to Hwoarang. And most characters who have an edge over Hwoarang do. Or make it difficult for Hwoarang do. And now Heihachi joins this fray. So if Lili was being slippery and controlling with long-range moves, this is going to be slippery with even fast... not slippery, but controlling it with the fast moves. And DF1 is such a key essential move in the game of Tekken that this is going to be quite difficult to deal with because it's really, really fast. And that +9 can more or less be used because you can press DF1 into it again. And even if you backdash, what's most likely going to happen is a single wave cancel and then backdash again. Or maybe a God Fist from DF1. Or even an OTGF. Yeah, so that's the Heihachi matchup. That's the big change. So this used to be a slightly bad matchup. Most Mishima matchups are slightly bad. But this guy, Heihachi, could most likely move to bad. Because of the way he can control now. And force Hwoarang in the way he wants him in. Like removing the stances and whatnot. Keeping him more honest. And forcing Hwoarang to deal with the situation more often. The DF1 and jab range is just crazy, and that's gonna just get mixed with just down 4, and you're gonna get chipped quite a lot. It's gonna be quite annoying for sure. And just for those reasons alone, he could easily move to bad. This is not even counting the God Fist, the OTGF, it being -10, his 13 frame while standing punish, and the down 1 tracking, etc. And of course forward 2-3 and forward 3 both being -2, so he has more leeway in those situations as well. And a forward 3 plus 4-3 is now also -4, so basically he has a lot more leeway in regarding to what he does in neutral. And the fact that he can squeeze a lot of that with just DF1 or maybe a sidestep in the God Fist is a big deal. Has been the Hwoarang matchup changes for season 4. All of the changes, 8 characters to be in total. And yeah, it's not exactly looking that good for Hwoarang, but it is definitely still doable. You just have to put a lot more work in it for sure. Lab certain situations, most especially for the characters who have become really quite strong. So Lili and Heihachi most respectively. You have to be a little bit more careful against other characters like Armor King, Feng, Leo, Jack Dragunov, etc. For Lidia, it's more or less slightly in Hwoarang's favor, but the way she's designed and the way she interacts with the matchup, based on the way what I've given the early matchup impressions, is still more or less going to be slightly in Lidia's favor. So Hwoarang receives some indirect nerfs in regards to this, but it's more or less still doable. He can still fight these matchups. It's just that most especially probably against the Lili and Heihachi, you have to work really, really hard, even including against Eddy. I forgot to mention him. And make sure you control your buttons. Don't string as much, because those characters are gonna have strong, small whiff punishment. Most especially Heihachi just stepping into a DF1 too. It's gonna be quite big. Again, by controlling your buttons as well, because you're gonna get counter hit. If you get counter hit or get hit by one of the follow-ups from Eddy, that's gonna be a free FF4. It's gonna be a big deal. And Lili just slipping through and getting whatever reward she pleases. So again, this has been Hwoarang matchup changes, the season 4 matchup changes, and that has been the cheese. Thank you for watching. The only thing I really want to stress about the Lidia Hwoarang matchup is that be careful with your lows.